So there's a lot of little configurations in terms of spirit babies. Sometimes a spirit baby may be with you, but they're not planning to come in and incarnate. They may be planning to come in and you may miscarry with them because they're here to further your own soul's growth.
Welcome to The Healing Cocoon by Urban Ascension. I'm Jacoby Gray, your host and healing advocate, bringing you transformational stories each week to inspire personal change in your life and help you feel more supported as you embark on the healing process itself. Through the study of coaching, kinesiology, holographic kinetics, meditation, Reiki, the chakra system, and many other modalities, I've learned how to release the blocks that were holding me back. Now I'd love to help you do the same. Deactivating your triggers and your traumas means you activate your happiness so you can experience more alignment, connection, clarity, love, fulfillment, synchronicity, and success than you ever thought possible. So from dark nights of the soul to radical breakthroughs and rebirth, this is the Healing Cocoon podcast. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to the Healing Cocoon podcast for another week. Today's very special guest is Nancy Mae, who I stumbled across when I was searching online for Walter McKitchen, author of the book Spirit Babies, which I've read many times over the years and given away copies of to friends who are also on their fertility journeys. And when I finally decided to initiate my IVF process earlier this year, I wanted to book a session with him. And sadly, I discovered that he'd passed away, but Nancy's name popped up in the search as a spirit babies expert in her own lane who had also studied with Walter for 7 years. So when I looked at her website, I instantly knew that I wanted to interview her on the show. I am so honored that she said yes, and this chat is an eye-opening discussion about the one major factor most people forget to include on their fertility journeys, the wants, needs, and desires of the soul they're trying to bring through, their spirit baby. Today we chat about what a spirit baby actually is, how they appear to Nancy, at what point they choose their mother or their father, their karmic contracts, the new generation of spirit babies coming in since 2020, how they feel about IVF, miscarriages, abortion, the reverence they're requiring their parents to have around the conception process these days, and so much more. Nancy is a sought-after spirit baby expert and intuitive fertility educator and creator and Hay House award-winning author of the Energetic Fertility Method, Tools for a Healthy Conception and Beyond, and has appeared on Open to Hope TV, hosted her own international radio show, and shared the stage with world-renowned teachers. Nancy has a Master of Arts in Clinical Psychology, a Master of Science in Cognitive Psychology, and a Master Certification in Intuitive Medicine. She also holds a Sports Psychology Certificate and is a Certified Usability Analyst through Human Factors International, as well as a non-denominational minister. As a sought-after life transitions coach and professional speaker, Nancy offers inspiring workshops to audiences all around the world, as well as transformational, in-depth coaching programs that help clients achieve new heights of success, meaning, and spiritual aliveness. Since I'm on the fertility journey myself, this episode was particularly impacting for me. But we're all humans who were once spirit babies, choosing these very bodies we're currently inhabiting and the families we came into to further our soul's growth. So this episode is actually wildly applicable to everyone on the planet. But if you do know someone who's struggling with their fertility journey, or even just considering beginning it, please share this episode because it might just have a little piece of magic to help them on their way. So I always start my podcast in exactly the same way. I like to ask, how did your personal healing journey begin? Was it from childhood trauma? Was it just a sudden awakening? Was it a mushroom trip? Like, how did you end up on this path? Were you spiritually gifted from birth, or did you step into that later in life?
I love this question. And it's interesting because as I get older, my answer evolves because I think I even gain more awareness of when this actually did start based on what I had previously thought. So when I was 10 years old, my mother passed away. And there was always this kind of feeling that I could connect with her and that she was still around in some way. So that was that. Then fast forward into my late 20s when I was a passenger in a car accident and my head hit the seat rest and just a way for my jaw to be knocked out of alignment. No Western medical doctors could help me. I worked with one of the best Western medical doctors for TMJ in the US, and he had a 90+% cure rate. Nothing would work with me. And I truly feel that that was one of the reminders to look into more alternative ways and more healing, older ways of healing, I'm just going to put.
More traditional methods.
Yes, that's a good way. Yeah, great word. More traditional methods to enhance my well-being. And that's when I delved more deeply into acupuncture, cranial sacral therapy. And I also went through some training by a man named John Kabat-Zinn, and it's called mindfulness-based stress reduction. And there's like thousands of peer-reviewed research papers now on that particular modality. And that opened my world up in so many ways, to be reminded that there's more than Western medicine. There's more than meets the eye. There's more than what the scientific data can show us. Although the scientific data these days, in terms of quantum physics and all that kind of stuff, they're showing us.
It's very supportive. Very supportive. Exactly. The blend is beginning.
Exactly. And then I also, between the ages of 10 and 29, there were elements in there where I was dabbling in certain things, but I was very academically focused, very left brain trained. I was social science researcher, worked at some very well-known companies, went to some very, well-known universities, those sorts of things. And then after the car accident, I was still doing my journey, and then lo and behold, I get married and we start to have children, and it all goes well. First time we try, we get pregnant, we were planning it, the whole 9 yards, that everything went great, the birth was great. And then when she was 1, when my older daughter was 1, we planned to have another child. And lo and behold, the first time we got pregnant again. And I thought this was it. The baby's estimated date of arrival was the anniversary of my mom's death. So I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this baby is going to heal my heart, because it was shattered when my mom left. And I'm so happy. This is great. And then I go in for an ultrasound, just a regular ultrasound, to find out that the baby had been dead for several weeks. And I had no signs or symptoms. So it was a missed miscarriage.
Wow.
And I was beyond devastated. I remember going into the car, and I was with my partner at the time, and I slammed my fist down on the dashboard. I was angry with God. I'm like, I don't know. This doesn't make any sense. Why me? All that kind of stuff. And even though that was one of the hardest things in my life, it's one of the things I'm most grateful for as well. Because from that point on, for the next 2 years or so, I was not able to get pregnant. Nothing would work. We worked with 2 reproductive endocrinologists. They couldn't find anything wrong with us. I even tried one of the fertility drugs, and I had a paradoxical effect that neither of the reproductive endocrinologists could explain. So clearly my body was telling me that's not the way for me. And it is a great way for a lot of people. It just wasn't the route for me. And I was working with an acupuncturist at the time. And I remember her saying to me, Nancy, how do you feel about, looking at a more alternative way of fertility? And I said, absolutely. She was the one who told me about Walter McKitchen, who is a wonderful man who's now passed. He passed in 2011. He wrote a book called Spirit Babies, How to Communicate with the Child You're Meant to Have. And I remember when the acupuncturist said this, I went home, I looked him up, and in those days, you called, right? You made a phone call to make the appointment. So I called, and his wife is the one who did all the appointments, so scheduled with her. And that very first appointment, I remember just feeling like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. I don't know why it feels like the truth. My brain can't wrap myself around it, but it just felt like truth. So I kept working with Walter, and truthfully, it took about a year to end up with my second daughter. There's a lot of other little elements that come into that year, but I ended up working with Walter even after the birth of my second daughter and up until the time he passed, because he was so pivotal in my healing, in my evolution as a soul, in what I do today in terms of working in this field of fertility and working with people's spirit babies. So that's kind of a gist of how, or maybe a long, how I got to where I am and what really transpired. I truly believe I came in very intuitive, and since it was such a tumultuous family that I came into, that I shut it down. That was the way to keep me safe. I definitely shut down my intuition. I've always been extremely empathic. I never understood why I could just understand what people needed. They didn't even have to say, but I could sense it. So there were these little clues, but I didn't realize it. I didn't even know I could speak to spirit babies until Walter McKitchen told me, oh yeah, because I talked with my older daughter in utero and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't realize I was doing it because I'm such what's called a clairsentient type person. So I feel things so deeply. And these days I can see things and hear things and all that. But back then I didn't realize that the clairsentience was such a deep intuitive gift.
And the clairsentience, that's the knowingness. Is that what that one is?
That's the feeling. You just all of a sudden, I get tingly all the time. And claircognizance is the clear knowing, which is also just this okay, that was the truth with Walter McKitchen. There was just this deep truth that sank in that first session with him that I'm like, all right, this is the truth, even though my analytical brain wanted to try and figure things out.
Thank you for sharing your beautiful story. And for those listening who aren't familiar with this wonderful book, it's a book that I gravitated towards. I was thinking about it the other day, and I think I consciously began my own fertility journey 10 years ago, or maybe 9 years ago, in 2014, when I just started seeing alternative medical doctors and started preparing my body. And it's been a long journey, and we don't have to talk about that, but I found this book, Spirit Babies. I don't know how I heard of it, but instantly I was like, oh, I need to read that. And then I read it, I devoured it, I've given it to so many girlfriends on their journeys. And recently, as I started my IVF journey, I re-listened to it. And I thought, you know what? It would be so wonderful to have a session with Walter. So I started Googling and I discovered that he had passed, but you came up. And I saw that you had worked with him for 7 years. And I thought, wow, I need to chat with you and get you on the podcast and learn all about this juicy, wonderful ability to communicate with a spirit baby. And I guess the first question is, what is a spirit baby?
Great question. I'll tell you my definition, because you might hear different definitions for different things. Just like you might, someone may say, what does grace mean? Or what does love mean? Or so spirit baby to me is this beautiful soul that is interested in coming in incarnating into this planet Earth to be here and have this experience of what it's like to be on this planet.
And what does a spirit baby look like?
So that's a great question. Walter McKitchen used to see orbs of light. Like he, in his book, will talk about seeing different colors, orbs of light. I typically see it differently. So spirit babies are going to look different to each of us based on our past knowledge, based on what makes sense to us. For me, I often see people. And sometimes they may see, like if I'm doing a spirit baby reading with someone, sometimes the spirit babies will show up as a little baby. Sometimes they'll show up, of people kind of in our age range, if you will, like somewhere in the 30s to 50s, somewhere.
An actual grown person.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes they'll be a very wise person.
Because you're looking at their soul, their oversoul, as opposed to the little body that they're going to inhabit when they forget who they are and come to Earth.
Exactly. So that's how it works for me. And sometimes I'll just see light, or light beings and not really human forms. Sometimes I cannot tell if it's a female or a male energy that they're wanting to show me. Sometimes it's very androgynous. So there's lots of little things. Maybe once or twice a year I'll see the orbs that Walter McKitchen really saw, but it shows up differently for me.
And are these spirit babies, do they travel with the mother from the moment that she's born, or do they enter the aura during puberty, or at what point does the spirit baby choose the mother? Or the father? Do they come through the father?
All of the above is the way I'll answer that. So I do believe some spirit babies have a contract with the mother from the time the mother, like they know, okay, you're coming in and then I'm going to be your child, and doing that and that and that. And it could happen with the father as well. I also feel that a lot of times it might not be that prescribed. And especially with the way I work a bit differently than how Walter worked. Walter McKitchen really honed in on one spirit baby and just followed that trajectory. I really like to work with the quantum field. So I will look out further, and sometimes I'll see multiple spirit babies. Does not necessarily mean that they will all come in. However, it gives the person more possibilities to bring in a child. So from that perspective, sometimes I'll be tapping into some spirit babies and it doesn't quite feel like they're ready, and maybe someone's been on their journey for 10 years or longer or what have you. And if I notice a spirit baby isn't quite ready and we don't know if they're going to be ready this lifetime, we can actually, there's a special way to call in other spirit babies, other souls into that family. So there's a lot of things that can shift that I don't think people realize. And I want to put this in here too, because a lot of people say, oh, I just want a reading and I 1 hour, it's going to be all fixed. Literally in 1 hour or any time I connect in with a spirit baby, I could easily look at thousands of little threads that could contribute to bringing in your baby. So while one session will give you information, what I have found is that doing more diligent work over a longer period of time reaps a lot more benefits. So that's why I like to work with people longer term. So there's a lot of little configurations in terms of spirit babies. Sometimes a spirit baby may be with you, but they're not planning to come in and incarnate. They may be planning to come in and you may miscarry with them because they're here to further your own soul's growth. I've also heard of situations, and this definitely, of when you and this particular soul have made an agreement to come in. Let's say, as an example, you had a past life together. If you don't believe in past lives, it's just let this go to the side. But I definitely do. So I'm going to bring that in because that's my worldview. And I definitely work with people with various different worldviews. But for this particular scenario, let's say there are past lives. So let's say you and this spirit baby have had a past life together, and you feel like inadvertently you caused the spirit baby to die sooner than they would have in this other lifetime. And that spirit baby's like, no, don't worry. Let's say you're up in this place where you talk about what you're going to do in the next lifetime. And the spirit baby says, no, don't worry. My time was coming in a couple months anyways. So don't worry about that. And then let's say you're still like, oh, wait, no. But I still feel like I want that time with you. I'm really, so you may have an agreement for whatever it is, let's say 3-4 months, that this soul joins you and then exits. And even that soul's going, this is going to be hard for you. You sure you really want to do this? And sure enough, that, you or whatever that person, this soul comes in and is with you for 3-4 months and then miscarries. Because that is your contract. That soul was not meant to come for a full incarnation with you. So these sorts of questions, there's never a quick answer because there's so many little permutations, and for each of us, it's a different story.
And so those thousands of threads that you said that you could easily look at in one session, what exactly is the thread? Is it a lifetime? Is it traumas? Are you sifting through the mother's blocks? Are you communicating with multiple babies? Like, what are the threads exactly that you're investigating?
It is different for each person. Anytime I'm doing a reading for someone, working with them in this way, I will always ask for the information to come through that's in the highest and best good for the person on that particular day, and for the highest and best good of all involved. So that means if they have a partner, the partner, whether they have children already in their family, if they, for the spirit baby. So those elements start coming into the picture. Oftentimes what I find, and I have found a little bit of a shift, especially since around 2020, of different things that are coming in for the spirit babies. I've always noticed that I work with a certain subset of spirit babies, not all of them on the planet. So just know that I work with a certain subset of spirit babies, and the ones that I work with tend to be looking for, especially mothers who are more aware, who are perhaps have done some more work on themselves, some more self-growth, might be, know about the chakras and alignment and conscious conception. So there's different flavors of that we can go into in the threads. So we might go off and look at chakras. We might be looking at past lives. We might look at intergenerational transmission of trauma. We might be looking at if there's a partner involved, that aspect of things. We might be looking at your parents. We might be looking at some potential physiology things that could be going on. We could also be looking at the spirit babies, and are they ready? Are they not? How many spirit babies? Oh, do we not see some that are ready? Do we want to call more in? Which is never anything I decide. It's always the person I'm working with for them to decide. Because if I decide to bring in more spirit babies, I am inadvertently creating karma for myself and disempowering the client. And that's the absolute last thing I want to do. Sometimes these threads can go back into past lives. Sometimes they can go into other people in the family. Sometimes they can, occasionally there's a spirit baby that will come in through one of our family members because we are not necessarily ready for it at that time. As an example of this, my sister's 4 years older, and she actually had kids, probably like 6, actually quite a few years before I even started having children or trying. She had two children. I've always felt like my niece could have been mine. I've never felt that way about my nephew. So I truly feel like my niece could have actually come in as my child had there been differences in terms of the timeline. So there are things like that that can come into play.
So spirit babies
And
can be looking for ideal familial situations and structures and setups, which any sibling could provide them with.
potentially, and sometimes the spirit babies, the idea is to be in your realm, your energy, like having a close connection. And time wise, it may not always be in the nuclear family, it may be in the more extended family. So those sorts of things can come into play. Then you look at location. Like, where does a baby want to come in? That comes into play as well. If there's a sperm donor or an egg donor, or if you're doing IVF, those sorts of things, I always like to look into those things as well. If I know someone's doing an IVF transfer or an egg retrieval or anything of that nature, we'll look at that. Some of these, well, the vast majority of these babies have not ever been through a process of IVF. So I like asking about how are you? How do you feel about it? And I will say it's very rare for any of the spirit babies to say absolutely not to IVF. Most of the spirit babies are really interested in the process. Some of them are really interested in the science of the process. Some of them are like, this is a cool thing. I haven't tried this as a soul yet. So they're interested in these different configurations. We also look at a lot of what the spirit babies really are interested in bringing in, energetically speaking, for this all to work out. And this is also, this is my feminine flow going over and over, kind of back and forth in the waves.
No, it's wonderful. Feel free.
This is the way I work, especially in a reading or in a situation like that. So from 2020 onward, I have noticed that there is a new kind of generation of spirit babies that seems to be coming in and bringing in higher vibrations to the planet and really looking for higher vibration mamas. And of course, extended family too, the if there's a partner and all that kind of stuff, and children as well, that it goes into there. But typically I work a lot with the mamas, especially if you're going to be carrying the baby, because these new these souls, they're not necessarily new souls, but souls that are coming in since around 2020, want some different things than I had seen previously.
Oh,
and
like what kind of things?
This absolute deep reverence for this whole process of bringing in a soul. What I often see, and I totally get this, is that people want to bring a baby in because they want to complete their family or what have you. And I remember, bringing a little bit of my story here too, I remember many times when my guides have come to me saying, and you fill in your own word with what I'm going to say, but they would say to me, Nancy, these are God's children. These are not your children. These are God's children. And God to me is source, is energy, is the universe, is whatever you want to call it. So there's a deeper soul calling for these babies that are coming in now that I tend to work with. And by coming in with this absolute deep reverence of the whole process of bringing in a soul, that it's bigger than just like this family, if you will, that they are coming for a bigger purpose, whether just to have their energy on the planet, or whether they're going to be a leader of some sort, or be inventing something that's going to help the planet in some way. Maybe it's in an environmental way. Maybe they're going to be an activist for women's rights. Who knows what's exactly going to be? But it's this absolute deep reverence for the fact that they have their own soul's journey too. And it's not only about
having
what
a
we
child.
typically think.
Just fulfilling that nurturing instinct, or that societal thing that we grow up, get married, and have children.
Yes. And so one of the questions I like to ask people, and this is usually a hard question, bless you,
Thank you.
is why do you really want to bring in a child? And I encourage people to journal about this and to, okay, you're going to get the first egoic responses. And then to really go into your soul, into your heart, tap into that higher self, or whatever you like to call it, this deeper knowing in you, to see, why do you want to bring in a child? Oh, my parents keep asking me, because, when are you going to give us a
They want to be
grandchild?
grandparents. There's pressure.
Or are the friends, all our friends are having kids, and we're at the clock is ticking, and so we need to have kids. Like, really tapping into what's underneath all this, because sometimes if it's not in alignment with your own soul's journey, that could make it harder to bring in a baby. So being in alignment with this bigger purpose of bringing in a soul can actually help these souls come in.
I'm interrupting this awesome chat to tell you about one of my all-time favorite creations, the chakra meditations. A potent combination of yoga nidra, binaural beats, and the chakra system. These meditations are designed to guide you into a deep state of relaxation where your nervous system can totally decompress and create the space for healing. I took my time crafting these meditation scripts because I wanted to make sure they resonated with every ounce of truth, transformation, and light I could hold. Each individual meditation addresses the specific attributes of each chakra and has a soundscape composed by source vibrations that is attuned to the frequency of each chakra as well. So from the main root aspects of prosperity, grounding, and belonging, all the way up to the bliss, self-reflection, and enlightenment of the crown chakra, each meditation is going to take you on an intricately curated journey to energetic freedom. You can download them via the link in the show notes of this episode or on our website, urbanascension.co. That's C-O, not .com, urbanascension.co, under the chakra banner. Right. And so these souls who are higher frequency souls who now can come down to the planet because the planet is starting to expand its own frequency. Oh my gosh, excuse me, my alarm. Because the planet is starting to expand its own frequency. Is it sometimes about the fact that the mother just needs to expand her frequency and align so that she can align with this child to bring it through? And
Yes.
How do you suggest they do that?
Lots of things. I mean, we could talk for years about this.
Yeah.
It really depends on, it's different for each person. Most people want the answers and they want a recipe. And that's what we're taught. We're taught to look for the answers. That's what we often in schooling, we digest information and we get through our tests and all that stuff. The way I work and the way that these spirit babies really are calling for us to work is in a more integrative fashion. So instead of seeking out all the information and going to that practitioner, maybe they have the answer, or maybe that person does, or that one, or that book has the answers, is to go more slowly and really integrate what you've done. Like if someone says, I read the Spirit Baby book in a day or a week, I know they haven't integrated the information from that book, because there's no way to do all those exercises and to do them on a deep level in that period of time. And same thing with my book, The Energetic Fertility Method, Tools for a Healthy Conception and Beyond. If someone says, I read that in a week, I know they haven't integrated. They're just getting information and they're accumulating. So what is the best way for someone to help these spirit babies and to really align themselves is to actually do the work, to put in the time to sit still, to sit in silence, to take a walk without your electronics, to disconnect, to do some energy work. I'm really big on energetic hygiene. That's what I like to call it. And I always say, here's the analogy I like to use. We're good at brushing our teeth. We usually, do it twice a day, most of us, and pretty much every day and all that kind of stuff. And we take really good care of our bodies. Oftentimes when we're on this fertility journey, we eat well, we hydrate, we get sleep, all that kind of stuff. And we often neglect the energetic hygiene. Like, how often do you kind of say a hello to your aura? How often do you say hello to your chakras? Do you even know what those are? How often have you cleaned your aura? How often have you separated your energy from other people's energies? How often have you grounded? When was the last time you updated your grounding? So there's so many things, and it really depends on the person, what I recommend. What I often find is people are not in their bodies, meaning that grounding is definitely a good thing for them to do, and learning to be comfortable with slowing down, even if it's for a minute. Like, set your timer, breathe in and out for very deeply, so you can feel your belly rise and you feel your belly fall on your inhale and your exhale, and even your chest rise and your chest fall on that inhale and exhale. Just even doing that for a minute can help you become present, and putting your hands on your body. I mean, so many things
Yes.
that go into it. So, and I'm happy if you want to, like, if you have any more specifics, I'm happy to be able to kind of pinpoint from there.
Well, I guess those specifics are specific to each individual person as well, aren't they? And what I'd like to do is come back briefly, because something in the book was Walter's explanation of miscarriage and abortion. And I think that this is indicative of the fact that you said he works with one spirit baby as opposed to multiple. But I can't wait for your take on this. But what I understood is that if there was a miscarriage, it's that the spirit baby isn't ready. And it sort of decides to come down, and then it freaks out and it goes, I'm not ready, I want to go back, I want to learn more. And so you miscarry and the spirit baby goes back to the mother's aura in the quantum field. And likewise with abortion, it's the mother isn't ready. And so the mother says, I'm not ready, and freaks out and decides to let that time frame of pregnancy go, but that spirit baby would then just go back into their aura and wait patiently until the mother is ready again. How does that work compared to what you were saying earlier?
As an example, with the story I told about that person and that spirit baby that just came in for 4 months or so and then exited because they had that agreement from a past life thing. See, I see that as another possibility for miscarriage, in that soul was not ever going to come back into her aura to incarnate again this lifetime because they had fulfilled their contract. So sometimes I do see this differently than how you're explaining.
Yeah.
But sometimes, yes, the souls are like, okay, yep, the test run. I'm just here to get you more ready to be able to hold me. Sometimes it's free will in terms of they get here and they're like, holy cow, I'm not ready for this, and they will go back. Sometimes it is written in the stars, or if you will, like I explained in that one situation. And,
so it's all dependent on the contract, essentially, isn't it, with the mother? And so those spirit babies that are seeking higher frequency mothers, and so they haven't quite found a mother yet, and you go through a process of calling them in during a session, how do they connect then with the mother? And is there at what point does the contract get written? And is that written between the higher self of the mother and the higher self of the spirit baby?
So lots of things here. Sometimes what I see is that there are already spirit babies lined up, but if there's one that's in kind of the front of the line that's just coming and going or doesn't know if it's going to do it, and then that one decides not to come, there's already one there. So you might not even have to call in another one. There may be
Wow, they
several
line
spirit
up.
babies in your
Is there
aura.
more spirit babies than there are people like ability to birth them? Is there more? Is the balance uneven?
That's a good question. I've never quite looked at it because I only work with a certain subset of the spirit babies, and I don't work with the whole spirit baby realm.
Right.
Um, I don't think there's any lack of souls interested in coming into the realm here
To planet
for
Earth?
this experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. In abortion, I also feel like sometimes there is an agreement similar to the story I told before, where this child's going to come in, they know the timing's not right, and then the mom's going to terminate the pregnancy. But that was written in the stars too, and it's a way to perhaps really get that person on a certain track. It might spur them into a dark night of the soul or something so that they can, again, look at their shadow side if they want to be able to come more into the light and more into their own soul's purpose. And they may have had an agreement all along, and it may not be just that the mom's not ready. That was already agreed upon, way up here before they even got into this fetus and
And
host
body.
situation. Yeah, I mean, I can talk about
Yeah.
more things
Well,
with
let's
it.
come back
It
to,
just
because I sort of took you off on a tangent there with my question, but my original question is, at what point does the contract then get written if once you connect a mother and a spirit baby, if there's not already one with them when they come to have a session with you?
so this is a really good question, and this is going to get pretty esoteric depending on
Good.
how
I
you all
love it.
like to
Let's
look
do
at
it.
this. And I want to reference a movie, and it's called The Adjustment Bureau. This is very action based, fast, so that's not your genre. Totally fine. I get it. However, the way the imagery comes to explain kind of what I'm going to talk about is just really cool. And this was like a big movie. So The Adjustment Bureau, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but as soon as the main characters would make a decision, you'd see all these lines start shifting. So that's basically showing us as we make a decision, the quantum field is constantly shifting. So one thought, one action, one something can shift that quantum field,
Opening up new timelines for yourself.
opening up new timelines. And what if all those timelines are actually simultaneous? So when you're asking for when do these contracts get made, what if everything is simultaneous? And this, from a human perspective, we can't
Is
grasp it
mind
because we're
blowing.
in
We're
time.
in linear.
We have this arbitrary time of 24 hours that some of us on the planet can shift 1 hour arbitrarily, usually twice a year. Right?
Daylight
We either
savings.
spring forward or fall
Yeah.
back. Right? That's totally arbitrary. So this idea of time, there is no time when you get into the spirit realm. So from a global perspective, it's all happening at the same time.
Right.
If you want to, so if we want to like go from more a human perspective, here's how I see it.
Okay, great.
There's there's a certain area that called Lives Between Lives where people go to talk about what's going to happen in their next life. And they get things situated, and you talk to certain people, and you can make agreements there with certain spirit babies. But I also feel like you do this based on, it's kind of, I don't know if you ever read these books when you were young. I certainly did, is when you read the book and you get to a certain page and they're like, what would you like to have happen? Would you like this
Choose
to
your own
go down this
adventure.
road? Yeah, so you get to choose what happens next. I kind of feel like that same thing happens for us. Goes along with how I see the quantum field working. So even though we may see something in this Lives Between Lives portal of this contract being made, there may be hundreds of other contracts that we have lined up based on different possible trajectories.
Gotcha.
This is, when I said there are thousands or millions of things that I could look at in a session, this is what I mean.
Yes.
So, and I also want to say people can get really stuck in the stories about past lives or how do I figure this out. One of the things Walter McKitchen said to me, and bless his heart, because he was so right, he said, Nancy, if you could have figured out this fertility journey, you would have.
Of course, yes. But you had to surrender to something greater than you, and that was part of the awakening process.
Exactly. And surrendering doesn't mean giving up. Okay, maybe giving up the control. However, it's inspired action. It's getting into this ability to access and receive this very feminine nature that's innate in all of us, whether we're male or female this lifetime. We all have feminine energy. We all have masculine energy. But really embodying this feminine energy and being in that receptive mode to receive our intuitive guidance, to receive insights from our higher self, and then to take inspired action instead of just, okay, let me get that. Oh, maybe they have the answer, or them, or them, or them, or them. That's going to stagnate things. It's when, for me, I get usually a feeling in my heart or an expansiveness or a tingling or just like a knowing that, okay, that's the way to go. And it usually takes time to cultivate that. So cultivating that sensation and then bringing in the action. That's the masculine energy. So we need the feminine and we need the masculine in order to bring in a child, because you either gotta either have intercourse, you gotta do IUI, IVF, you gotta do some sort of action to get a baby
inspired
here.
action.
And the more inspired it is, the easier it flows.
And so I would love to definitely talk about some real life examples and of situations of how this has played out in people becoming pregnant when they've come to you in absolute states of complete hopelessness. But before that, I'd love to just talk a little bit about working with Walter and how you trained, or how often did you work with him? Did he take you through exercises? Were you communicating telepathically? Like, what was your experience like in training with him?
This is a great question, because to be honest, I didn't know I was training with him. Like, it was not like a formal training, anything. He knew. Because of some of the questions he would say, we would talk about my career, we would talk about certain things, and he would say to me, you would have fun working with spirit babies, you have a lot of experience doing this. So he was very open-minded in that way. So it wasn't a formal training. It was more about my own soul's journey and my own soul's evolution. He would give me exercises to do, whether it was, I'm now divorced from the partner I was with, who I brought my children in with. And, during part of that time, I was working with Walter to see what we could do to shift the energy of the relationship of my partner and I at that time. And so he would give me exercises and I would work on them. And, so that was after my daughters were here. But it was just a culmination of doing the work that he and I talked about for my own soul's journey. He wasn't here trying to say, here's the recipe and here's how you can be like me. In fact, he never even, other than, you could have fun working with spirit babies and you have a lot of experience doing this and you're extremely intuitive and all these sorts of things. It wasn't like, here, Nancy, I'm going to pass you the torch. Working with him was not, I didn't work with him every week. It was nothing like that, because it was actually, I always had to schedule a session with him. I could never email him for answers or anything like that. So it was really scheduled in that way. And we would often talk monthly. Sometimes he would come to Sacramento, California. So I would drive out from the Bay Area to meet him in person. Most of the time, most of the time it would be over phone.
Mm.
So it didn't even, we
Didn't
didn't
even
have
have
this
Zoom
same
or
technology back
yeah,
then.
yeah.
So it was a very organic way of working together.
It was a mentorship.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. And him allowing me to find what my path was. Right? Because
Yeah.
I really didn't know. I mean, I came to him wanting to bring in a child and, did, and had a very unusual, as he called it, a very rare occurrence during that where we ended up, yes, I brought in another soul. We ended up terminating that pregnancy because this particular soul had some karma that she kept tripping up on. She didn't want to trip up on it. So we, for the best and highest good of her and our family, let her go. And I do remember Walter saying that, and he didn't say anything before we made this choice. He said, you made the absolute right decision for your family. She would have destroyed the family.
Wow.
And
And so how did that translate in the physical realm? Were you having a troublesome pregnancy? Like what was it that got you to that place?
we had some genetic testing done, and it came back with results that she had a body that was not going to help her integrate into the mainstream society, which is exactly what she wanted. I mean, that's the cool thing about having these deeper intuitions is you get a sense of being able to communicate with the spirit babies and what their karmic lessons are, what they really want to not do this lifetime, what they're trying to avoid, or work through. And this particular soul had a lot of really challenging lifetimes in the past. And she knew that I would be able to hold a certain energy to help her be who she truly was. And she so wanted to come in and be a part of our family. I'm getting all tingly right now. I can feel her as we're chatting. Um, and she just at the last moment, I mean, Walter said she was ready. The angel said she was all ready. And then last moment, these spirit babies have free will just like we do. She ended up choosing a body that had a genetic disposition that was not going to suit what she really truly wanted in the long run.
So how did that happen? That choice to make a body. How does she choose the body? I guess what I'm trying to say is that a conscious choice, or do they just get given the body and she was like, oh, this vessel won't work for me.
For me, here's how my belief is: we all choose our bodies.
Okay.
As a soul. So if you don't like your body, you chose it before you got here. And so I always really recommend people loving up their bodies. It's like our best friend. Like if we don't send love and appreciation to our body, that's a big message right there.
Yeah.
So
And were you in communication with her at that point? Did you have that ability then to communicate with her? And is that how you were able to terminate? Or was it purely a practical decision based on the genetic results?
totally felt like the right thing to do. And my partner at the time and I, we were both very clear that that wasn't in the best and highest good of all of us. We already had one daughter, and we just knew we wouldn't be able to give her what she wanted, and she wasn't going to get what she wanted either. So it was there was a lot that went into it. It wasn't totally practical. Of course, I'd been working with Walter this whole time, so I knew a lot about this spirit baby. I knew a lot about how she got tripped up, and I worked really hard to get her here. Every single day, chanting 2 to 3 hours a day, 7 days a week for months on end. And then, so I didn't take this as a decision that was light. It was a very, very challenging and decision that I've never thought that we made the wrong choice. I've always 100%, and it's been many, many years, 100% have felt that we made the right choice. And we let her know, because Walter had no idea if she was going to come in or when in a healthy body. And we let her know if she wanted to come in as our grandchild, if she was ready then, or if she wanted to come in another lifetime or what have you, that was fine. But just for now, we wanted her to be able to get some healing in the spirit realm and for us to move forward with our family.
Wow.
So,
and this is,
yeah.
thank you for sharing that. And this
Yeah,
was
you're
part
welcome.
of your 2-year fertility journey, and perhaps also part of your own training in a way to be able to help other women who would now go through similar situations of having to terminate.
Well, the 2 years was before I met Walter. So my fertility journey was actually more than 2 years.
Right.
It was just 2 years between, this miscarriage, which was the same soul. She just came in because she knew I wanted a baby, and so she came in to let me know she was around.
Right.
But she had no indication. She was not planning to stay. She just wanted me to know that she was around. But then I was so absolutely devastated that she didn't want to come in again because she didn't want to do that to me again. So again,
she just
this
wanted
is
to
more
say,
of a,
"Hey, how you doing? I'm here. I just want to let you know I'm here, and not this lifetime, but we're connected
or not
somehow.
right
Or not
now,
right
or
now."
yeah.
Right. And so she was that original miscarriage that kicked off your 2-year journey before
That
you
was the
met
same
Walter.
one
That was the
as this
same,
one.
that was the
That's the same
termination.
one. That was a
Yes.
termination. Then we let her go.
Okay.
And then I did some work and we
Yes.
called in a new spirit baby. And literally within 2 months, I was pregnant. And that's my second daughter.
Wow. Okay, that's
Yeah.
really beautiful. Really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm
Thank you.
finding the most moving is that as you're talking about all of these hardships, there is such joy and light radiating from you. I can't feel any
Oh,
sense of attachment to the trauma or the loss. There's a beautiful acceptance and understanding that this is the way of the world or the universe and what we're here to do. And so there's a very beautiful calmness about you.
oh, thank you so much. And believe me, when I was going through these things, it was different. However, I truly believe that it's these very challenging situations that really allow us the opportunity to go deeper on our own journey. And that's what we're here for. And sometimes it's the fertility journey that catapult into a deeper exploration for ourselves.
Right. And
Yeah.
so the actual pregnancy itself, I have someone in my life who's going through, I think it's called hyperparemesis, where the vomiting, just the extreme nausea, hospitalization. Is that part of the spirit babies is that part of the contract up there that they are signing up for right from day dot? They're like, I'm going to come in and my mother is going to be so ill with me that she'll be bedridden for the entire 9 months, and we're both going to learn a lesson from that. Does it all kick off like immediately?
That's a good question. And in this particular case, I remember talking with someone about this, and it was, I remember him saying something to me that made a lot of sense. Is the nausea is often an indication that the mom's vibration is not at a high enough level for this baby to really, for it to be more harmonious in terms of energetics.
So the mother is getting
there's
an
some,
upgrade. Is that what's
so
happening?
there's,
The higher
well,
frequency has come in?
they could, but when you're that ill, it's hard to run energy. It's hard to do the work unless your friend is like listening to guided meditations or something. When you're feeling really nauseous, sometimes all you do is can get through the day. I mean, I remember that for me. I had a lot of nausea with both of my daughters. Well, actually, all three of my daughters. I was pregnant 4 times with two daughters. In all my pregnancies, I had a lot of nausea. And I do feel like there's something about the energy. So the more that we are able to do things and get things a little bit more in alignment up front, I think it's easier. There may very well be that being bedridden like this, having to receive, right? For some of us, you got to receive the care, especially if you're in a hospital or something like that. So yes, that can be for some of us written in the contract, because that person, that's part of that, your friend's soul's purpose. They're why they came here this time to work on what they came as an example. So those are a couple of little
but
threads.
it could really, I think I'm getting, it could be anything.
It could be, and that's so many people just want the answer. And yes, I can give you high level things of a lot of the stuff that I typically see. Yet, like in my case, when I worked with Walter, it was very unusual, and it wasn't something he typically saw.
Yeah.
And I do feel like that was part of my training, because I went through I went through a much deeper process than most people would, because this baby required it.
Right. And I think that's a beautiful segue into, maybe could we talk about, as much as you can, I know there's probably client, what are they called? Disclosure agreements or whatever. Yeah. Confidentiality. That's the word I'm looking for. But can you speak generally about some situations where someone's come to you in such a state of hopelessness, and what were the things that you saw that helped them to then draw that baby into the physical realm?
Absolutely. There's a couple that I can think of right off, that they had some miscarriages, and they came to me. They were both very spiritual to begin with. And we had a session, and they went home and they did the work. It was a lot about alignment for them and getting into agreement with their energies, like the masculine, feminine energies, and as a couple. And lo and behold, they were able to bring their spirit baby in right after that. So that is an example, like a super simple thing. Sometimes it's a longer process. If you've had a loss, as an example, someone came to me after a stillbirth, and she was really wanted to know what happened and about that soul. And we realized that particular soul wasn't quite, wasn't going to come in right now. But there was definitely a reason for this whole situation. And there was another soul who was ready to come in and who had a very different energy. But it was the grieving of the stillbirth and aligning her energy to be able to bring in this new baby, which she did. And then we worked again together, and she brought in another one too. So trying to think of something like, just like where I can give you like, oh, I did this exercise with this person, and I did that exercise with this person. So someone I just recently worked with, who had been on this journey for a long time, and she came to me. I have not met her partner in person. She went through my Energetic Fertility Method program, and she had noticed in the past couple of years that she had done a lot of self-help work for herself, lots of getting into more personal growth. And I truly believe it was her spirit baby really wanting her to upgrade her energy. For her in particular, it was a lot around her, what she did for a career, slowing down a bit with that, changing doctors, changing kind of the protocols that she was doing in order to bring in this particular child. Yes, the medical professionals you're working with can play into this. If you're working with IVF clinics, that can play into this factoring as well. So that there's that. Also, some other things. If you're working with another client who was working single mom by choice, working with a sperm donor, is she didn't have the right sperm donor.
Oh, wow. And the spirit baby is like, that is not my genetics.
Exactly. So once you call in the right sperm donor and you realize that that's, part of this equation, then lo and behold, you're going to get the embryos and they're going to be healthy, and then you can do the transfer and it all works.
Wow.
So it can be a longer process, which I typically see, especially with a spirit baby since 2020, because of this higher vibration they really want to come in with, so that they don't have to do so much work to fulfill their soul's purpose.
Yeah,
they
don't
want
have
to be able
parent
to
their parents and deal with all of that trauma and karma. They want to just come down and fulfill their purpose because they have bigger purposes to fulfill because they're of such a high frequency.
Yeah. And I mean, I could talk for days about the amazing people that I've worked with and the different stories and it's, so that's a little snippet.
Yeah.
I love working with all types of people and all types of situations, because I do see myself as a detective, kind of helping to find
that
a
was
needle
an
in a
image I got
haystack.
actually as you were talking about the sperm donor, and then the spirit baby is like, that's not my sperm. And I got this image of all of us humans down here just trying our best and changing doctors and doing this and doing that and trying to figure out how to bring a baby through. And it's almost like we're the greatest part of the equation we're in denial of or don't have access to, which is the spirit baby and its own desires. We're very much just working with our own energy and our own wants and needs. And if we're not connecting intuitively to that little soul and asking what they want, or resistant to what they want, for my own little soul, I really wanted to bring it through with a loving partner. And it was just adamant. It wanted to come through with a sperm donor who is my friend. But it took me years and years and years to come into acceptance that that was my journey. Because I didn't want that. I wanted to be a family. And the spirit baby was like, nope, this is the genetics I want. And so I'm understanding that we humans perhaps need to start being much more open to the other side and to our spirit babies, because we can hurry this process up.
There are even situations where I've worked with people and they might be deciding, kind of thinking in the back of their mind, oh yeah, we need to move at some point, and we will. And the spirit baby is actually waiting for them to move and is really there to help them find the house if they're willing to work with their intuition.
Wow, because the spirit baby's like, this is where I want to be born. This is my destiny. These are my ley lines. This is my energetic place on the planet.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I also just want to say something about spirit babies and communication. It's not like a conversation you and I are having. The spirit babies, it might be all of a sudden like a thought just comes to us, or I've had, in my own personal situation, a friend of mine had a dream about my second daughter. So my second daughter went to her to give her information because she knew she'd give it to me. She didn't come directly to me. So someone else may have a dream about you having a baby. The spirit babies may bring you information through poems, through songs. Some of us are more clairaudient. We might get a little buzzing in our ear from time to time. So we'll get information a lot through songs or through hearing things, whether it's, oh my gosh, I just heard someone talk about that. And then the next day I heard that again. And then, oh my gosh, I heard it again. That can very well be your spirit baby, or through animals, through birds, through butterflies. They can bring us messages. But when we're thinking we need to have this sort of conversation, why isn't my spirit baby answering the phone, if you will, as an analogy, right?
Hello, spirit baby. I'm ready. Talk to me. Yeah, it's signs,
and we want it on our
synchronicities,
timeline.
Messages.
Yeah, because if you think about it from that phone analogy, when you call someone, does the person on the other end always answer?
No, they don't. Sometimes they're busy or they're not at their phone. Sometimes they actually choose to ignore you.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with the spirit babies, right? Is leave a message, and if you still don't get it, try again. And what I typically find is the spirit babies are communicating. It's just that the person doesn't know how to receive the information yet.
And that's the part of the process of the up-leveling that we're going through, whether it's through aligning with our chakras or meditating or chanting. But these are active tools that are opening us up to that other realm so that we can communicate.
Yeah, and I'm even going to add in some of it is just even being present with your everyday life, doing the dishes with presence, like feeling the dish in your hands and the water, and if you're using a sponge or whatever, like literally being present
Eating
while you're
purposefully.
cooking.
Yes.
Yes, while you're
Intentional
taking a
eating.
walk.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we're out like, oh, let me just get my steps in. But take a moment, stop, look at the beauty all around you, and be present, or feel the different muscles that engage as you are walking. Bring presence into your everyday actions as much as possible. That's another way to really come into alignment, I feel.
Yes. Yes. So if people want to work with you, you do have the Energetic Fertility Method. It's a course. They can take that online. Do you still do one-on-one sessions?
I do. So the Energetic Fertility Method program is an 8-week program that I offer, and you do get a spirit baby reading with me, and you meet with me each week. So we have a Zoom call. You can get to ask me questions. That's a group setting, but you do have, just like you've been asking me questions for a while, you have that opportunity in this program. I just want to reiterate, in a one-time spirit baby reading, you often aren't going to get everything you need. Yeah. I highly, highly recommend the longer term program. I am right now opening up some spots for single spirit baby readings. I will let you know that it is definitely an investment, because I want to work with people who are really committed to this work and who I know are going to actually take, and it may be the guidance may be, get into your heart more. It's not going to be like walk 5 steps, turn around 5 times, and you got your baby in your hand. It's going to be subtle stuff. Like here's some task for you, or some exercises for you to work on your 5th chakra, as an example, or whatever, speaking your truth. There's going to be some things like that come up in these sessions. So I hadn't for a while, but I am now offering some spirit baby readings. And for new clients, I have 2 options. There's a 1-hour session and a 2-hour session. The 2-hour session will allow us to go in and have you do some actual healing between you and the spirit babies. Definitely, I see a huge benefit in that. I don't know how long I'll offer the 2-hour sessions, because I haven't. This is brand new. But it is a real way of not just getting information, but actually like doing some healing to expedite things.
Yes, that sounds fantastic. And we are going to put all your details in the show notes of this episode on our website, so people will be able to find you via Instagram, via your website, and any other method that you share with us. Nancy, this has just been so illuminating, so exciting, so beautiful and heartwarming. Thank you for being here on the Healing Cocoon podcast today.
Thank you so much. I have tears in my eyes, because it's been such a joy, and I've really enjoyed being here. I've loved it. And thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for supporting the Healing Cocoon podcast. It's your listening ears that make it all possible. What also makes it possible is if you rate, subscribe, and review the show. Reviews in particular are really cool, not only because they help our ratings, but also because I have no way of knowing how the podcast is positively impacting your life. So if you feel like sharing, please do. I would love to hear from you.